Welcome to the WTR Small-Cap Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. Today, we're joined by Giampaolo Marino, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at Energous Corporation, NASDAQ ticker symbol WATT. Energous builds wireless power networks for the enterprise, using power bridge transmitters and battery-free sensors to deliver real-time visibility across warehouses, cold chain, and retail. Also joining us is my Water Tower Research Equity Research colleague, James Kisner. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining today's podcast.
Morning. Morning.
Giampaolo, for listeners new to the company's investment thesis, could you please tell us about the company's business model and the important markets you're addressing, please?
Yeah, so I will say that let's talk about really, some of the challenges that we address, which is proportional to the business model. But I will say that Energous Corporation today is addressing, some of the challenges in what we call ambient IoT, which is a carve out of the IoT ecosystem that we've been talking about for the last 10 years. And with its RF-based wireless power transfer technology, so the company basically primary problem that it is aiming to solve include obviously battery dependency and maintenance, right? So elimination of the need, to recharge batteries in IoT devices by using, what we call RF-based energy harvesting, right? At the same time, also reducing maintenance costs up to 80%. And trust me, that is a huge cost that nobody talks about it, but it's always there. Minimizing e-waste and also ensuring continuous operation without battery replacement. So this is fundamentally, the most important thing that we see in terms of pain point and cost, in terms of industry like supply chain, for instance, right, where we go in and really start to look at some of the inefficiencies. And by eliminating, again, all these constraints, we start enhancing, things like visibility, for instance, intelligence, automation, and again, and making sure that, we basically boost up, their inefficiency within their supply chain.
That's great. That's a really important and huge market. So very exciting. I'll now turn it over to James Kisner to ask a few questions.
Thanks, Tim. So what have you seen lately that tells you the model is working?
Yeah, that's a great question, James. I think it's always good, right? Every time you are experiencing with a new technology, I always like to think about there is always like an adoption curve, right? That kind of like takes shape. So and that adoption curves starts getting very real. When you're actually starting to see rapid adoption of your technology, across different industry, different markets. And in our case, also adoption of our technology across some of the Fortune 10 customers and nationwide.
Okay, that's really helpful. I think you guys have talked about a $4 million order backlog in Q2 25. Can you say more about what's in that backlog and how do you think about converting it into deployments?
Yes, so that backlog reflects our product, what we is basically our Power Bridge product solution. In essence, we have a family of product, but specifically in that backlog, we're talking about our Power Bridge Pro, which is a 2-watt conductor device, 8-watt IRP that we have released to market last year. And so I would say that's the bulk of the backlog that we have right now. In terms of I will say, that backlog will be converted as part of the deployment phase that we have started, with one of the Fortune 10 customers in Q4 throughout basically 2026 and beyond.
Thank you for that. I was hoping for the listeners less familiar, perhaps in simple terms, you could say more about what PowerBridge does. Like, what does a typical setup look like in a warehouse or a store?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always like to talk about in simple term. I always like to use an analogy, right? So I'm sure we're all old enough to remember, the shift as we went through cable internet to Wi-Fi everywhere, right? Suddenly, we have Wi-Fi everywhere. Great. So the same, in essence, we're doing the same with power, right? We're going through the transition of cable power to basically power everywhere, and that's basically what Energous is pushing right now in industry like supply chain, logistics, some of the pharmaceutical industry. In more of a technical term, basically, I would say that Energous Power Bridge is a radio frequency RF-based wireless power transmitter And that transmitter is designed to deliver over-the-air power and basically connectivity to basically battery-free IoT devices, such as sensors, tags, which basically are coexisting within the ambient IoT. It's really a key component of the Energous wireless power network solution, because it's the backbone of what we call power for ambient IoT. And that basically what it provides, constant power, constant visibility, again, across, some of the industry that I've just described.
Yeah, that sounds really neat. I think you've said that battery-free sensors and tags are central to your approach. So where do customers feel the benefit first? Less maintenance, fewer manual scans, or kind of always-on visibility?
Absolutely. So again, there are some fundamental benefit that we address in battery-free sensor tags that basically our customers are basically benefiting from. No battery is, again, equivalent to low cost, right? If I take the battery out of the sensor right now, I'm reducing the overall BOM cost of the sensor itself, right? Sometimes, up to 50%. Believe it or not, those batteries are very, very expensive. But the devil is in the details. Also, I am addressing the maintenance cost of replacing those batteries. I'll just give you an example. I start deploying thousands of sensors out there that are battery operated. Well, these batteries are not decaying at the same time, right? So, I can predict when the battery is going to go off on specific sensors. So, and when it does, I have to dispatch someone to go take that battery out, replace the battery, reset the sensor. That is cost associated with cost of maintenance. And so that cost is actually very high, especially when there is no predictability, or, when you don't know when that battery is actually going to decay. So what we do is, again, we not only eliminate the cost of the battery itself, we eliminate a huge cost of maintenance, and provide basically, our customers benefit in terms of, well, now they have the capability to deploy more sensors. More sensor means more data. More data means, well, I can feed now my AI engine, with more data and make better decisions.
Oh, that sounds really compelling. Seems like there are going to be some regulatory tailwinds here. The U.S. Food and Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, and some new e-rules for supply chain transparency. Just can you talk about how these mandates are shaping demand and timelines?
They are actually, I think, these mandates are actually creating a lot more urgency from our customers, to start adopting, technology in the likes of Energous, right? It creates urgency in terms of, well, for instance, the FSMA, which is basically, it's requiring transparency of food supply from the growers all the way to the store. So it's requiring basically intelligence on top of RFID. It's requiring a lot more data. It's requiring about, logging the history of cold chain applications. So all these is basically, it's what, in essence, what Energous does, right? And at the same time, also, for instance, we know that in Europe, there is a mandate that will probably take into effect in 2027, where there is a ban on all disposable batteries. So every sensor that is using a coin cell disposable battery will be banned, right? Because again, these batteries are toxic. And so they're trying to eliminate, a number of e-waste, that every year basically reaches landfill. So I think, again, like I said, these are important mandates that are basically raising the bar and raising the urgency to do something different to what to what industry has done conventionally in the past. And that's something different is again, ambient IoT, and Energous being the backbone of power for ambient IoT.
How about that? Government helping you guys out. Imagine that. So, your materials, your public materials cites big pain points around inventory distortion and vaccine spoilage. Can you share an example of how your platform helps move those numbers in the right direction?
Yes. So, and again, there's a huge pain point that we are addressing. Huge pain point that we are addressing in cold chain. Huge pain points that we are addressing in logistic application. Product diversion, right? Cold chain, product spoilage. But let me give you like really a tangible example that I was working, probably a couple of weeks ago, with a leading Fortune 10 customer within the pharmaceutical space. So this retailer is basically grappling about $5 million in annual losses due to their incomplete visibility of their supply chain. Well, they have basically drugs that are supposed to go and ship to specific stores, and for some reason they are not. They're disappearing, or they're shipping, they're being shipped to different stores. So that level of visibility and automation, it's not there. And that is basically causing them to lose about $5 million a year, right, every year. So by deploying our technology now, the retailer can achieve real-time and end-to-end visibility across basically their entire shipments. And again, our solution can help reduce product loss by an estimate of 35 to 50%, minimize diversion through, again, automated rerouting, alerts, improved delivery, and obviously higher accuracy. And that basically saves millions of dollars annually. Like I said, they're losing about $5 million. That's not peanuts. That's a lot of money.
Wow, it sounds like you're really solving some problems for your customers. Now, you guys have developed your own silicon, like the EN series, and you hold 250 plus patents. So, how does owning the chip stack and IP matter for performance, cost, and scale? Does it make a big difference?
It makes a huge difference, in my opinion. Again, the ownership of the IP within our chip design really enables Energous to continue to push higher and higher performance. At the same time, also increase barrier of entries, for our competition, right? For instance, right now, Energous has the highest power solution available in the market, and our competition is basically 4 times less than us, okay, in terms of power. But at the same time, I think controlling your ICs, controlling your IPs within those IC also enables you to meet the stringent regulatory requirements in different countries. For example, here in the United States, right? Or in Europe. So by controlling our IP, by controlling our IC, we're able to basically meet those requirements and get basically our product to basically, regulatory approval, like in the likes of what we've done lately. So I think this is fundamental, especially for a new technology and for a company like Energous to control not only the system, but also the semiconductor inside.
It looks like you have some chips in your background in your resume, so that probably comes in handy.
Very handy, yes.
Yeah. So, if we were to reconnect in 12 months, like what are the 2 or 3 proof points that you would point to that show Energous is scaling?
Yeah, I would say on top of my mind, over the next 12 months, we are aiming to increase the number of full-scale retail deployment that we currently have and expand into more and more use cases. Obviously, increase ARR, which is obviously our revenue, and make it obviously reoccurring, and really be on a good revenue growth projection. And also, which is very important, ecosystem expansion with 3+ probably new enterprise partnerships under our belt that will enable us to continue to expand our technology and to continue to expand the rate of adoption of our technology.
Awesome. Thanks, Giampaolo. I'm going to hand it back to Tim for some closing comments.
Thanks, James. When you were talking about the cold chain, all I could think about is seemingly rarely does a week go by anymore where there's not a food recall somewhere in the United States, sickening people and sadly even killing people. So what a huge market just for that little niche alone. But
Absolutely.
Thank you, Giampaolo Marino, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at Energous Corporation, NASDAQ ticker symbol WATT, for joining us today and providing insights into Energous and the ambient IoT opportunity. As I mentioned to you, Giampaolo, prior to the recording starting, I provided outsourced investor relations services for the world's largest industrial energy storage player prior to co-founding Water Tower Research in 2020. So I have a full appreciation for what a game changer your firm's technology will become over time. Also, thank you to James Kisner for the thoughtful Q&A. And lastly, a special thanks to the WTR producer and editor of the podcast, Krista Fitzpatrick. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the small cap written research, podcast, fireside chats, industry-specific symposiums, and conference schedules. We will see you next time on the WTR Small Cap Spotlight podcast.